All right, welcome back to part 2 of chapter 6. In this section, we're still working on the tail fin. In this case, we're working on the middle section here, kind of with the drive shaft that we can see in here. We've got what could be exhaust ports of some kind, the tubing right back in here, and then these extra details. There's not going to be a lot of detailing, even though it looks fairly complicated in the concept, particularly right in here, some of these sections, and then in the top view and such, all of this in here. Really what this is going to be is a lot of repetitive detail, particularly these pieces are all going to be pretty identical that we should be able to just work through fairly easily. These sections right in here are basically already there. It's just going to be a matter of adding some edge loops. And then some of this detail we actually won't even add in, just because, some of it's kind of not really very easy to tell what it is and doesn't really seem to actually add to the vehicle itself, because really similar to, say, a helicopter, the kind of the middle tail fin area is really fairly basic in terms of its components. Basically we just need the engine components going back through here, and then the actual tail fin area. And since these don't turn or anything like that, we should be good to go. And then actually, this is probably not so much a drive shaft as a long engine of some kind, or basically thruster that would then attach right in here. So let's go ahead and let's first work with these pieces that we have that are already subsurfed. So that includes these right in here. Let's go ahead and first separate these pieces out from this section. So I'll just hit tab to go into edit mode, make sure everything is deselected by just double tapping A. And then I'm just going to hit B, left click and drag across this section, make sure I've got the entire thing selected, and then I'll hit P and separate by selection. Then I'm going to go ahead and recenter the origin right in here, since currently this origin is way over here, but the center of my pieces is right about in here. So I can first hit Shift-C to make sure my cursor is centered across the X and Y axis, and then I will just left-click right about in here and hit Control-Alt-Shift-C, or Control-Alt-Shift-C, there we go, and origin to 3D cursor. That will reposition that right there. And again, if you can't remember that hotkey, then just hit T and choose origin right here, which you can also see as Shift-Control-Alt-C. Okay. Now we'll hit tab to go into edit mode, and let's just start by adding in our edge loops. I think most of this is going to be fairly simple. We're just going to leave this about like it is. So let's just add an edge loop right up to here. We'll add in another one right up down to there. And then I think what I'll do is I'll go ahead and add in another one right about here, and I'm going to hit G, Z, pull that down such that it's not so obviously overlapping that other section. I could go ahead and deselect that edge loop and then deselect those and then bring this in along the x-axis, maybe pull it up a little bit such that it kind of matches this angle a little bit more. And then maybe I'll go ahead and select these two on this side, pull them in along the x-axis by hitting G and X such that again it matches this angle right in here. Then what I need to do is go ahead and fix this, since now I have a curvature in here. So let's just select this edge, hit G and Y, and pull that out until it appears to be roughly straight. I can add in another edge loop right up like that, and that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and take these three vertices. We'll take them in along the y-axis, make sure things are staying fairly consistent, maybe in along the x-axis a little bit. And we can maybe pull that out. And that starts to look pretty good. It's going right back in there through the tail fin. Looks pretty nice. And I think we might just leave that like it is. Although I do want to go ahead, maybe select these faces right here. And I just want to pull it in along the x-axis just so it lines up a little closer with this. I can maybe pull that in a bit more. Maybe I'll select these ones, pull them out along the x-axis, and then maybe the same thing with that. There we go. Now it all just lines up a little nicer. Okay, that looks really good. In fact, I think I'll just leave that like it is. It kind of helps add that little bit of paneling to get the final effect looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and work on this big piece just since it's so prominent. So I'll just select it, hit tab to go into edit mode. And looking at our concept, we can see that, it appears to just be, maybe it's an exhaust of some kind, or it's, a joining of several different pieces. So not going to worry too much about what it maybe is at the moment. I'm just going to follow the design that we already have. I'll first start by just adding an edge loop right down like this. Another one right in. Another one right here. So I'm just sharpening up all of these surfaces. And same thing here. And right there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now I'd like to go ahead and bevel this. So I'm going to select this. I'm going to hit Control E and edge slide. Slide it in. And then I'll add another edge loop right up like that. And another one down like that. And then let's go ahead and take this piece here. I'm going to hit E to extrude, right click, scale it down a little bit, and then I'm going to do that again, take it in, and then I'll extrude one more time in to create, a kind of a barrel of sorts. And then maybe I'll extrude it one more time just to make sure that bottom is nice and square. And then I'm going to go ahead and say select these two faces, or these two loops. I'm going to hit Shift D, right click, Alt S to scale them out along the normals, make it a little bit larger. And maybe I will, actually I think that'll be good. And then I want to go ahead and click the W and subdivide smooth again. Like we did on one of the previous sections to subdivide the circles to get it rounded, to extrude in the pieces. Because I'm going to do the same thing here. But I'm only going to do it once, and then I can delete this center edge loop. And then I want to go in and select every other face. So let's first see if we can get the piece selected. Here we go. There's one loop, and then I'll hit Control L to select the rest of it that's attached. And I'll hit Shift H, and then I can just select every other face. Again, I'm in face mode, so which is switch between them with Control Tab. Select these. And there we go. And I'm going to hit E to extrude, right click, Alt S to scale them in. We'll go just a little bit first, and then again. So again, that's extrude, and immediately right click, and then hit Alt S, and we'll do that one more time. So E to extrude, right click, Alt S in just a little bit, like so. Then I can go ahead and I'm going to hit Control Tab, go back to vertex mode. I'm going to rotate around so I can see this bottom, and I'll just grab all those bottom faces, hit X, delete the faces, and then I'm going to add in an edge loop right up along the top edge like that, such that I'm left with a squarish result. And so if we zoom out here, you can kind of see what I'm left with. Looks kind of cool. And maybe we'll hit Alt H. Let's go ahead and select this. I'll just select this vertex and hit Control plus to add to my selection, and I'll hit E to extrude, right click, scale this down a bit, and then I will hit E to extrude again, scale it down, and then extrude along the normals, and one more time, so we get kind of that effect. Looks pretty good. Okay, so there's just some little extra detail that helps add to things. Let's add in some loops right up to here, and to there, and another one, and then another one. Okay, so now those are merged together nice. I want to be sure that this piece is not intersecting this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and grab this piece. Let's hit Tab to go into edit mode. And on this side of it, I'm going to go ahead and scale this loop up. And then I'm going to scale this loop up, and I can just hold down Control, snap to that vertex. And then I'm going to go ahead and select, say, this loop and this loop. And I'll just hit E to extrude. And apologies for the jump there. Every now and then it seems my mouse is kind of locking up, causing that jump. And then I can just hit E to extrude, take this out, and I'm just going to go all the way into the tail fin, about like that, such that everything looks nicely covered. So now it gives the impression that this is just kind of cut in along that surface and following that. Okay, let's go ahead and work on this frame right here. I just need to sharpen these loops up. And same thing, I'll add in 2 along this face, make sure that's nice and square. I could go ahead and add in another one right up to this edge, And then I could select these edges, hit E to extrude, take them up. So it adds in an extra ridge there. Add in an edge loop down. And then another one on top. There we go. So it just makes those fit together a little nicer. And in this case, I might go ahead, let's select this ridge and these pieces that we're working on. There we go. These two. I'll hit Shift H just so I can hide everything else. And then I actually want to go in here and first off, I'll delete any of these in faces that I have. Hit X, delete those faces. And then I want to bring these up right here to the top of that ridge. And then I'll do the same thing back in here. About like that. Just so I don't have any sticking above the surface there. Okay, I can go and hit Alt-H, bring everything back, save the file, and let's see what we want to do. These are all looking good. Let's go ahead and work on this piece now. I'm going to hit Shift Space and add in a subsurf modifier. Again, increase the level to 2, optimal display. Save the file, hit Shift Space, hit Tab to go into edit mode, select everything, W, and shade smooth. And you can see we're getting lots of normals, so let's hit Control N, which will fix those. And then it's just going to be a matter of adding in the loops initially, and then we'll try and add in some extra detail. So the first thing I want to do, add in a loop here, add in a loop there, another one. Right down to the circle. In fact, I'll just take it all the way down, and then I'm going to scale it up a little bit, and that ensures that this is perfectly circular, because if I were to do that, say, on this one, and I go all the way down to about right there, you'll notice that my loop is not actually perfectly circular, and so I'm not giving as clean of a mesh, whereas if I do it, go all the way down, and then back up, then I have a perfectly circular loop, because this first mesh was perfectly circular. Okay? And now I'll do the same thing again on these. We could, do these using an array modifier or something like that. But since there's just a couple pieces and we've already got them built, and since they're at an awkward angle, I'm going to go ahead and just do them manually. If I take, let's see, I don't believe I've got the normals set up for this. I might have, right, no, I don't. So yeah, I'm just going to do each one of these individually real quick, by the time that we could set up the array modifier and such, we could go ahead and get all these loops added. And since we're not going to be adding an immense amount of detail to these or anything, most of the work is already done, then I'm really not going to worry about it. And also, since they're not such a prominent detail, you're only going to see them from certain angles, and due to their shape and everything, they're kind of lending to their own detail, even though they are rather simplistic. There we go. So that takes care of all those. Now those look nice and sharp. And then we've got the shaft right down the center. Let's go ahead and take a look at our concept. Save the file. And one of the things that I really like in the concept is this kind of circle here on the top. And so what I want to do is let's go ahead and let's go in here. Let's maybe select. Well, let's first go ahead and select this. Let's turn on our manipulator. Let's just check, make sure that we don't have any local views or anything. We could check some of our faces, and actually it looks like this is actually the one that we originally used. This face.000 is the one that we originally used for manipulating these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select these three. I'm going to hit Shift D, move these along the local Z axis just to duplicate these. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is, say on these two, I'm going to go ahead and position or select these. And then I'm going to hit Shift S and cursor to selection just to center it right there. Because then what I want to go ahead and do is hit Shift A, add in first undo the selection. Let's go ahead and hit View and align View to selected to the top. There we go. So now it's perfectly aligned right here. And I can hit Shift A, add in a circle. On the circle, let's go ahead and hit F6. Take the vertex count down to, we'll do 6. Hit OK. We can take the radius down. We'll just drag it down until, you know, it's fairly close, somewhere right in there. And make sure we click Align to View. Okay. And then I can scale this down. And then I'm going to go ahead and hit E to extrude, or no, actually, no, I'm just going to hit Alt F and then Alt J, which will fill that. But then you'll notice that it's filled one quad here and then a triangle and a triangle. So I'm going to undo that. I'm just going to go make sure I'm in vertex mode, and we'll just fill this manually. So fill a face at a time. And then now this will be able to extrude around the normals. And so let's first just move it down along the local x-axis. So I'll hit G, X, X, and then I'll scale this down. And you notice it's the x-axis because the red manipulator handle is pointing down. So I've got it down to here, and then I'll hit E to extrude, hit double tap X to bring it up, hit E to extrude again, bring it up to right about there, do it again. So I'm leveling it off with this side, and then I'm going to hit E to extrude, right click, S to scale, take it up, and then do that again to about there, and then scale it up, extrude, extrude again. And this time I'm going to go ahead and scale it in, give it a nice bevel, extrude and scale in, and there we go. Then I'll just add in, or since this is fairly small, I'll just shift these so that we're not, or crease them so that we're not adding a huge number of loops. Shift E, 0.8, crease that. There we go. That looks nice. I want to go ahead and add in, say, another loop or band around these. So I'm going to select, say, this loop here. I'm going to Shift D, right click, hit E to extrude, snap along the local Z axis. I'll hit G, Z, Z, snap over to any one of those vertices. Then I can hit Control L to select it. I'll hit S to scale it up. And there we go. So now I've got an extra band in there that, now I've got some duplicate loops through here, but I'm not going to worry about those because I may, change some things down the road or something. And hit Control N to remove that normal. Hit 3 to go back to side view. Let's maybe select this. Let's make it a little larger. So right about in there. I can then go ahead and remove this edge loop. So I'll just select it, Alt right click, delete. There we go. That looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and now duplicate this across. So hitting L and hovering my mouse over. I can then hit Shift D, double tap Z, move it over to be centered, and do it again. Okay. That starts to look pretty good. And I think I'm going to go ahead and add in 2 bars through here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select this piece, and I'm going to hit Shift D, right click, and S, and then Shift ZZ, which will exclude the local Z axis. So I can then just trim this down to size. I'll move it along the local X axis. So again, hit G, double tap X, and then along the local Y axis to right about there. And then I'm going to go ahead and deselect this side, move it along the local Z axis, so G, Z, Z, and then snap to, say, that vertex right in there, and that way it's not intersecting there. Okay, then with my cursor still centered there, I'm going to hit Control L to reselect the entire piece, since I already had this loop selected. And then I'm just going to hit Shift D, right click, S, or then period, then SX -1 to just flip that across. There we go, add in some extra good supports in there. We can go back to the top view, switch over to another layer so we can see our concept, and things look pretty good. Let's see. We need to add in another loop right along each one of these, since right now they look a little too soft. There we go. That looks good. And now let's go in here, and I want to assign some of our various materials. So on these pieces, I'm going to assign the light gray. So we'll just choose this, click light gray, click assign. Let's go ahead and just hit Control I then to reverse the selection, and we'll add in a new slot, choose the dark gray, click assign, and I think that'll be good. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and just add on another band on this. I'll just scroll that right up to there. I'll go ahead and select this, hit E to extrude, right click, S, first hit comma, and then S, double tap Z, move it in just a little bit. Then I'll hit E to extrude, right click, Alt S, and then I can do that again. So again, Alt S, and that gives me a nice sharp band, just a little extra detail in there. I think that looks pretty good. I think we can just about leave that there, and we're actually just about done with this piece. Just kind of look at, oh, we've got this little section right in here that we need to work with. So let's first maybe, actually, let's see what happens if we just hide that. You know, yeah, we're just going to hit Alt H, and we're going to hit X and delete those vertices, because they're really not adding to anything. And that looks pretty nice as it is. This little spot looks fairly empty. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this piece. I'm just going to go in here, Control Tab, select, actually, you know what? Yeah, we'll select, say, these two faces. I'm going to hit Shift D, right click, hit 1 to go to front view, and then just move them down approximately like this. Hit E to extrude, take it up. Hit E to extrude again, take it up just a little bit. I'm going to select on this side, deselect those, hit X, delete those faces, or actually, you know, rather than deleting those faces, I'll just add a loop right up to that edge. And then I'm going to select, say, this edge. So I'll select the entire thing, deselect that part, and then hit E to extrude, and then just take it in until it intersects, hit X, delete those faces. Okay, and then what I can do is I'll select this, I'll hit Shift D, move it along the X-axis, move it along the Z-axis a little bit, maybe along the Y, and then I'll do that one more time. Just kind of tweaking things until it looks about right. And there we go. So that just helps, you know, add in a little extra detail to balance things out. Although really we probably ought to go the other way. So let's go ahead and select this, take it up, move it over, take it up a little bit more, and then we'll select this last piece, take it down along the Z-axis about like that. So that way, you know, the top intersection is up there, and so on. Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and call that quits right in here. Although actually, you know what? Let's go in, and on this piece, let's first add in, say, another band right in here. So selecting these, adding in appropriate loops, E to extrude, Alt S, E to extrude, Alt S. Go, and then do the same thing right in here. There we go, and then we might want to crease those up. There we go. That helps to add just a little bit extra detail. And I think I will go ahead and do the same thing here. But on these, I'm going to go ahead and just select these two loops. Shift D, right click, Alt S to scale it down just a little bit. And I'll hit E to extrude, right click, Alt S, take it out. And then I'm going to E to extrude, right click, Alt S, take it out just a little bit more. Then I'll hit Control L, and I'm going to assign the dark gray or the light gray material to this. Click assign. That way it looks a little bit like a, you know, a washer or a band of some sort. Looks good. Alrighty. There we go. Okay. we're going to go ahead and finish off the tail and, in fact, the entire exterior of the vehicle in this section. We're just basically going to be modeling the tail fin and then the main thruster right here. The first thing I want to do is go ahead and focus on the tail fin itself. This will be pretty simple. We're just going to go ahead and select it. And then I first want to separate out the thruster so it's a separate mesh. So I'll go into edit mode, select it by hovering over one of the vertices associated and hit L. Then I can hit P, separate by selection. Then I'll go and hit shift space to unmaximize my view, switch over to the modifiers tab, add in a subsurf modifier as usual, increase the count to 2, and optimal display. Then again, I'll also go ahead and select everything and W and shade smooth. Then what I want to do is first just do a little bit of smoothing to make sure everything looks good. Like I can see that, some of these vertices here need to be smoothed out such that this gets a nice smooth line. So just doing a little bit here and there on those pieces just to do a little bit of tweaking. Do it on these ones as well. Select that, pull it down, pull this one down. Maybe take these, or I'll take these ones down a little bit right there. Bring that around. Same thing here. So it's just a matter of getting everything nice and even so that you're not going to see any basically variation in the way that the light hits the surface. We want to be sure that it gets a nice even highlight. That's one of the things that really helps when rendering this kind of thing is the actual highlights or the reflections of the light on the surface. And so as long as we make the surface nice and even, then those highlights and reflections should look really good. Okay, that looks a little bit better, just a little bit cleaner. And yeah, so what I want to go ahead and do now is let's first add in a loop on this piece just to sharpen this up a little, this seam. I don't want to go all the way down because I want this seam to be kind of smooth such that it's going around like this, just from molded pieces in the metal. But I do want to add on a loop right along here and another one on the top. Although on the top, let's first select this loop and we're going to bevel it a little bit, or basically round off this corner to give it a little bit more of that airfoil shape. So we'll first just hit Control E, edge slide to bring it over a little bit, and then we can add in that extra loop. And then we might actually slide this back down a little bit more. So again, we're keeping that nice airfoil shape there. Now I notice that if I hit Control 1 to go to my back view, some of these thicknesses seem to be a little bit off, so I'm going to go ahead and select, say, these three, pull them up a little bit. And you notice that right now I've got the limit selection of visible disabled, so I can see through it. And I like to work with this on most of the times, but sometimes I find it beneficial to turn that off when working on a rather simple mesh like this, just because it gives you a little bit more control. I'm going to go ahead and add in another loop right along the back here. And then again on the top side, something about like that. I'm going to go ahead and turn the limit selection of visible on now that my mesh is getting a little more complex. Let's take this loop here, and I'm going to deselect these center vertices, and then I'm just going to take this up along the z-axis, get a little more shape to these. Maybe I'll take this one up just a little bit. There we go. Again, kind of getting that airfoil shape. I want to go ahead and also, you'll notice that when I rotate around in object mode, I'm not actually rotating around this, I'm rotating around the origin point right here. So with my cursor centered by hitting Shift C, I'm yet again going to go ahead and left click right in here to then reposition the origin, which, if you remember, can either be done by hitting T to bring up your toolbar panel and clicking origin, or click Control Alt Shift C and choose origin to 3D cursor. Now when I rotate around in object mode, this is the central point of my rotation, since I have this option in the user preferences, which can be accessed by hitting Control Alt U or choosing File and User Preferences. In the interface category, I have Rotate Around selection checked. I believe by default that's not checked, and so if you're finding that it's not rotating around that, then you can just double check that and be good to go. I'm going to go ahead and add a loop right up along here, make this a nice sharp edge, and I'll add one on this side of the surface as well. About like, whoops, not quite that much. There we are. I want to do the same thing over here, so I'll first add one in right here, and I'll add another one on this side. Bring it out such that's got a nice sharp edge. I'm going to go and add a seam right down the center, so I'll add in a loop right up to this edge, and then I'll add another one right next to it. And then I'm going to take this edge loop in the center. I'm going to hit Alt-S and scale that along the normals. Then just add in a seam like that. I'll do the same thing on the top side. So I'll bring that in, and then I'll add another loop right next to it to ensure that I've got a nice sharp crease. I'll select this side, hit Alt-S, and scale it in along the normals. Now this side I might go ahead and take in a bit by just hitting G and X. Make sure it's nice and sharp. That looks good. Okay. I think I will add another one right along the bottom of the wings. And so I'll just say add one right about there, and then another one right next to it. And this time I'm going to use 3 loops, one on each side, and then one right down the center, just like that. And then Alt-S yet again, take it in, and that gives me a nice seam like so. I might take that in a little bit more. Whoops, went the wrong way. I'm going to rotate around this so I can see it. There we go. And yeah, I think that will be good. Okay, let's go ahead and work on this piece right up here. So let's first just add a loop right up to the back side, and then another one right here. And I'll add another one to the orange as well, since that's the, this is our light. And then we can just leave it nice and rounded like it is. Although I might go ahead and say select. I'll select these 2 edges. I'm going to hit E to extrude, take it in, and then I can actually delete this edge loop. So I'll first select it, hit X, delete the edge loop. Then I'll select this one, Control E, edge slide, take it in a bit. Then I'll also go ahead and select this loop right here, and I'll hit Shift E and 0.8 to go ahead and crease that up. So that way we've got a little bit more separation of the pieces. I'll leave the front exactly like it is. Although I would like to, let's do this. I want to just select this inside loop right here, and I'm going to go ahead and hit V to rip that away. Then I'll scale it down a bit, so that we're not running into problems if we ever click remove doubles, because then what I want to go ahead and do is we're just going to add in a little extra style to this by adding in a loop cut, just like this, then right clicking, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit Alt-S, scale it out just a little bit, and then I'll scale it out a bit more along the X-axis to, and actually, frankly, that looks pretty terrible, so we're not going to do that. But instead, what we'll do is select, let's go ahead and undo that loop cut, and let's just select this loop, and then these loops, and we'll go ahead and hit E to extrude, right-click, scale it down a bit, and then E to extrude again, take it out just a little bit, and then again, and scale it way down to something like that. And then I'll add in another loop right up to there, and another one right up to there. There we go. Just add in a little extra style. Although on this, I might go ahead and take this back along the Y-axis just a little bit. Maybe scale it up. Scale along the Y-axis. There we go. That way it's rounded rather than pointed. Okay. That looks pretty good to me. I think that I will... I'm also going to actually go ahead and add in a loop right at the base here. I think that'll look a little nicer. Or, excuse me, a seam. So just scale that in. Maybe add another loop right up next to that. There we go. Yeah, that looks just, a little less organic, but still keeping the nice organic flows to it. I'm going to add another loop right along this back edge. Sharpen that up a bit more. And another one right along this back edge as well. Make that a little sharper. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so we're going to leave that like it is. Now let's go ahead and move over to the thruster. So I'm going to select the thruster. And let's first go ahead. I'm going to just hit Shift Space. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to reposition my cursor right about there. I'm going to hit Control Alt Shift C, Origin to 3D Cursor, remembering that I've got my cursor centered along the X-axis, right in line with the Z-axis, such that, it doesn't mess up my mirror modifier. I'm going to go ahead and hit Tab to go in edit mode, and then I'm actually just going to hit X and delete everything, because you'll notice that if I go into top view, for some reason my background images are not showing. There we go, check that. And it seems that in some way or another, I managed to remove my background images. I don't actually know how that happened, but 1 second, let me just restore those. Okay, I've gone ahead and restored my background images. I don't actually know how that happens. I have seen it happen from time to time when you save a new version of a file and then open it in a different location or something. Sometimes your background images won't come through, but just be aware of that. Generally, if that happens, it's just a matter of re-adding them and you're good to go. So on the thruster, you'll notice that this is actually 2 separate pieces, whereas before I had it as 1. So I'm going to hit Control-1 to go to my back view, hit Tab to go into edit mode, and I was already in edit mode. I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift-A, add in a circle. I'm going to hit F6, change the size, say, we'll just go down to 0.2. We're going to take the vertex count down to 12. Oops, 12. There we go. We're going to align it to view, and then we're also going to hit Shift-Space, disable clipping on the mirror modifier for the time being. Hit 7 to go back to top view, and then we're just going to move it up, scale it down to about right there, and then we can hit E to extrude and take it right in. Okay, let's go ahead and select everything. We'll move it in along the x-axis just a bit, about right there. We could go select our original mesh, go in here, Alt right click to select this edge, give us a little bit more room by moving that along the x-axis there. We could go ahead and select this whole portion of the tail fin, move it out along the x-axis just so we're getting a little bit more room right in there. Let's go ahead and select this again. We're going to give it the dark gray material. In fact, let's just remove the other materials from this. There we go. So now it's just the dark gray. Let's hit Tab to go into edit mode. And I'm going to go ahead and let's just select it. We're going to rotate it around. Actually, no, just bring it out just a little bit. We can scale it down a fair more just so that we have some room, because now I want to go ahead and add in, say, actually, we're not going to do that just yet. Let's select everything. We're going to hit W, shade smooth. Let's add in our subsurf modifier. And then what I want to do on this is this centerpiece is going to be fairly simple. Basically just going to be a tube that we're going to extrude in, and again, and then we're going to extrude along the y-axis, and then we're going to take this in along the y-axis, scale this way down to about right there, and then we'll extrude again and again, scaling it in, and then we can go ahead and take it in along the y-axis again and again. And this time we'll just go ahead and scale it down quite a bit, like so. There we go. And then what I want to do is I want to line the inside with the kind of squares like we did before, or kind of ridges. So I'm going to select, say, let's see, actually, how do I want to do this? We're going to go ahead, if I look at this, okay, let's actually do this with a modifier. So I'm going to select this circle, I'm going to hit Shift S, cursor to selected, and then I'm going to go ahead and hit Tab to leave edit mode. I'm going to hit 1 to go to front view, and hit Shift A, add in a cube. On this cube, I'm going to hit Tab to go in edit mode, scale it way down, scale it down along the Z-axis a bit more, along the X-axis, to make it kind of a rectangle. I'll bring this out along the Y, pull it up to about right there, and then I'm going to grab this edge. I'm just going to move it up to right about there, so it's not quite all the way through, about like that, so you can kind of see how it's sticking through. And then I'm going to we'll add in subsurf modifier on this, turn on optional display, set everything to shade smooth, add in a loop. On the back side, we'll just delete the face so that we don't need an extra loop. We'll also just delete the faces on the top, and we'll add in one more loop right down like that, so we get a nice square. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and add or actually first I'm going to add in an empty, and this empty we'll go ahead and call the thruster, how about guide array? I don't know, or actually, rather than guide, ridge is probably a better name for it. Ridge, because we're actually going to reuse this here in just a moment. There we are. And then on this, we'll go ahead and add in an array modifier. This array modifier, we're going to offset based on the object. This object is going to be the thruster empty that we just added. There we go. We're going to increase the count to, say, probably 8 or so. We'll grab that empty, and then we'll just rotate this around. And what I want to do is, let's just rotate this around the y-axis 15 degrees, something like that. And then let's go ahead and select this, and we'll just increase the count until it goes all the way around. There we go. So now we've got all those ridges right in there. And you know what? That's actually maybe a bit too many. So let's go ahead and select our empty again. Maybe it's easier just to select it from the outliner here by just right-clicking on it. Let's go and rotate this another 15 degrees. And then we'll select this. Let's take the count then down to, it should be 12. Yeah, there we are. There we go. That looks a bit more practical. Okay, then we can, if we want to modify this at all, we can. Maybe we'll take this edge in. Then go in here, deselect these edges, pull these in. And then that looks pretty good. Okay, now we're going to use this same technique on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Shift-D, right-click, hit Tab to go in edit mode on this object. Then we're going to hit X, delete the vertices, hit Shift-A, add in a new cube. This cube I'm going to scale down to about right there. Then I'll scale down along the Z-axis quite a bit, and along the X-axis to be about like that. I'll take this up, and then we'll bring it out to about right there. Then I'm going to take this edge, take it way inside. I'll go and add in a loop right up to this edge, just about, to square it off, along with adding in, say, 2 loops here, which I can then just scale along the X-axis to bring out. Select everything, W, shade smooth. Let's select everything, scale down along the Z-axis a bit. And then I want to go ahead and right in the center here, I'm going to add 2 loops, scale them down along the Y-axis, and then I'm going to scale them along the X-axis just till about where they touch, about like that. Then I can go ahead and delete this side as well. And there we go. Okay, so then this empty, we're going to go ahead and take, yeah, actually I think that'll be about right. Although I realized that these actually needed to extrude all the way back in there so that you can't see them. Something about like that. These we'll go ahead and give our dark gray material again. Dark gray right there. I like the light gray on these, but then I want to do a little bit more work in here. I want to add 2 loops, and then I'm going to add another, just a single loop. Then I'm going to go over here, hit 3 to go to side view, hit B to bring up my box select, deselect this side, and then I'm going to also deselect the front, and now just pull this up along the Z-axis like that, which then, if I add in, or actually, if I now crease those edges, say Shift-E, 0.8, I'm now left with the really cool ridge right along them. Okay, and I'm also going to then take these edges and pull them in along the Y-axis about like that. Give me a little bit more work in there. I'll maybe add in another edge loop right up to this edge to get rid of that nasty shading that I was seeing. And that looks pretty good. So now I've got a kind of cool thruster that I now want to just mirror across the X-axis. So I'm going to go over to the modifiers, add in a new modifier. And remember that since I'm using the array and I need my object origin to be right in here, I'm going to go ahead and choose that that mirror one that we had earlier. So I'll just type in mirror, and we've got prop mirror, which we can just go ahead and use for this one as well. I'll do the same thing here. Toggle these down, add in a new mirror modifier, and choose prop mirror. No reason to add in yet another empty when they're doing the exact same thing. Okay, that looks pretty good. And now I definitely want to go ahead and, well, let's see. No, I think we'll just leave that like it is, about like that. Now I need to select this part, and I'm going to select this edge loop as well. I want to bring these along the X-axis. Add in a little extra room right there. You can see I'll need to do some work right in here, which actually, let's just go and deselect these. And then we'll pull this back in along the X-axis. We'll pull that a little bit, then deselect that, and then pull these in just a bit more. I can take that edge in, even out that angle. Let's see what piece this is here. Let's just go in here, select these two loops. We're just going to pull them back further, scale them down a little bit along the z-axis. And maybe I'll add in a loop right up to, actually, you know what? We just need to pull this edge down. So I'm going to add in a loop right up to here, such that I'm not disrupting that. And then I'll just take this, pull it down, take this, pull it down, and that way nothing is intersecting like it was before. Okay, we could even then select all of these loops here, pull them forward a little, maybe deselect these ones, pull this forward a little bit more, and a little more. Okay, I'm going to go in, select these vertices, just pull them back. That looks good. Now I need to work on this area right in here. So I'm going to select these. I'll just pull this up along the z-axis to right about there. Pull this one up. So basically just pulling it up until it fits approximately. I'll go ahead and select this loop now. I'm just going to hit E to extrude, take it back along the y-axis a little bit, and then a bit further. And I'll add in one more loop right up like that to then make that fit really nice. Okay, I've still got some intersection right in here that I really ought to deal with. But I'm just going to go ahead and select this piece, go into edit mode, pull the whole thing down a bit like that. I'll go and select this one, select everything, hit S, and then Shift Y. So I'm just scaling down the overall diameter and not the length of it. Then I can take this down a bit further. And I'll grab this, select it, pull it down along the z-axis to about there. Let's go ahead and cap the hole right in here. So I'll just select this, hit E to extrude, scale down, and then one more time, and then I'll hit W, merge at center. There we go. And that looks good. Now I can go ahead, select this, and I can select this area, pull it up along the z-axis. Looks like I need to select both of these. Let me rotate this around. Go in here, select only these ones, pull them up. If I add in another loop all the way along there, which doesn't hurt anything, then I can go in, select just these, pull it up, go in, deselect that vertex, pull these back in. And again, right here, so, I'm really just tweaking the shape to make it fit this profile nicely. Then I'll tweak the bottom a bit more. I'm just trying to avoid as much intersection as possible with the thruster pieces. And then what I want to try and do is even out the angles in here. It's mostly just a matter of moving them along the y-axis. Grab these three, pull them back as soon as they line up there. That starts to look a little better. So you notice I'm kind of lining everything up right along these edges. That looks pretty good. Probably enough that I can just about leave this, although I'm curious why I've got the sharp edge right in here. See, if I just hit X to delete that edge loop, then I could add in an edge loop on this side, and that way I'm not pinching that entire area, and that kind of solves that issue. Although I could select these, hit W, and smooth a couple times, which is actually not working at all. Instead, I'll hit SX, scale to 0. Same thing here. Maybe go in here, select all of these edges, Control E, edge slide, just to separate them a little bit more. That looks pretty good. Okay, and I think that will do it. So there we go. Okay, I'm going to yeah, we're just going to save the file and call that quits for this section. So that is the entire exterior of our vehicle. You know, if we look at this from various different angles, we can see that while there's definitely, you know, a lot more that we could do, it looks pretty darn good, and we've made really great progress throughout this entire thing. Oh, I am going to go ahead and move this empty to layer 2 by hitting M and then 2, just to be consistent with everything else. And I'll move my camera and my lamp to layer 3, so that way only my geometry and this one lattice, which really ought to go ahead and move that to layer 3 as well, or layer 2 actually. There we go. So now only my geometry is on layer 1, and there we have it. So I'm going to call this chapter done, and we've got one more chapter which will be pretty short and sweet, which we're basically just going to model some of the geometry on the interior just so that we get the impression that, you know, a pilot could be sitting in there. So I'll catch you soon on chapter 7.